Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 10th climate webinar, Advancing Resilience and Mitigation Measures. This webinar is part of an initiative of USAID's Higher Education System Strengthening Activity, or HESSA, entitled the Research Coordination Network. And we are helping faculty, researchers collaborate with each other, with the government ministries and agencies, and with the private sector to advance research on climate change. I'll say a few words about HESSA. HESSA is an effort by the United States Agency for International Development to help public universities in Pakistan educate their students in such a way that they have the technical knowledge and the skills needed to be more employable in the private sector. And we also encourage universities to help students develop skills that would allow them to become successful entrepreneurs and to start their own businesses and to become employers. So we work with 16 public universities, as well as with the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's exciting webinar, Professor Dr. Rohama Gill. She is a professor in the Department of Environmental Sciences at Fatima Jinnah Women University, and FJWU is one of our 16 partner institutions. So I'm very excited to be able to welcome our panelists and to welcome our participants. And we will have time for you to ask questions as we move through our webinar this morning. So please, Dr. Gill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Holland. Thank you, everyone, for joining this morning. Before I introduce the speakers, the guest speakers that we have this morning, I would like to share, I would like to introduce myself and my research work at Fatima Jinnah Women University and what Fatima Jinnah Women University is contributing towards the climate change stresses, how we can overcome these. Since I'm teaching and doing research as an environmental chemist at Fatima Jinnah Women University, my research interests are in polymer science and in nanotechnology. So I would like to briefly introduce to you what Fatima Jinnah University is doing with the purpose of thinking how we can integrate this transdisciplinary approach towards addressing the climate stresses. Because this morning we have guest speakers who are representing the non-government organization, the government organization, and myself representing the academia. So this mix really is actually needed to combat the climate change stresses. In the research lab where I work at university, I work on nanotechnology just to explore how we can mitigate or how we can combat the climate change stresses, with the hope that this can be a step towards improving the climate stresses, and a step towards improving the climate, the energy stresses as well. Since just a brief introduction, that since nanotechnology is highly appreciated in physical sciences due to high surface to mass ratio, large surface area, and high aspect ratio, these properties of nanomaterials have been exploited for chemical, electrical, physical, mechanical, to prepare the products which can be eco-friendly. So to make the manufacturing more friendly, we are using the principles of green engineering and green chemistry by producing non-toxic nanomaterials using renewable resources and less energy. So with the aim to improve the environment, this is just a bird's eye view of what I'm doing at the Materials and Environmental Chemistry Laboratory along with the research group. The research field that I work is the fabrication of thin films via different techniques. The major is the layer-by-layer technology, or the assemblies, through which we've been able to prepare ultra-thin films for oil adsorption. Oil, oil spillage is a major issue in environment, and how these films can be utilized for oil absorption of dyes. And since these coatings at ultra-thin thickness, if we say that they are robust, mechanically strong, electroconductivity, and they have flame retardancy as well. These films have are photo degradable and can be used for aquatic pollutants to minimize the aquatic pollutants. The idea is to contribute towards addressing the SDG 3, SDG 7, and SDG 13. Hence, we were working on fuel cells as well, preparing anodic materials, cathodic, and electrolytes. This multicolored and multi-layered piece of cake is just an analogy to convey to my audience today that these multi-layer thin films can be tailored, they can be fabricated according to the end use, or according to the desired requirement of the requirement where they can be used. And we assemble the different macromolecules into thin films so that to have a multiple or a combination of different properties. This technique is different than classical synthesis where bulk chemicals are used. In LBL, we use very less material and less energy. Hence, the surface of any kind can be utilized onto which the thin films can be prepared. We've been preparing, mimicking a natural product that is strong material nacre, naturally occurring, and we've been able to prepare films which are hydrophobic, elastomeric, robust, and mechanically strong. We were able to report this work as well. The thin films have been utilized for flame retardant, preparing flame retardants. These flame retardants are halogen-free. Using biopolymers for that is chitin has been utilized in embedding these in fabricating and embedding chitin into these multi-layer thin films. These nano thin films have had multiple properties due to the combination of different metal oxides, different elastomers, and materials which are flexible and strong and can be utilized in the environment. This is a variety. I'm just going through, due to the paucity of time, I'm just quickly going through the architectures that we've been able to report at ultra-thin scale. These films have also been utilized and prepared for nano filters, having photocatalytic properties. Triple action hybrid nanofilter linings have been successfully prepared. Having 3-in-1 X system means that they are antimicrobial coatings, and they have adsorptive property to adsorb any heavy metal from the water, which is polluting the water bodies. These films are not just a one-time system, they are regenerative, and we have checked these films by using different cycles. The constructed architecture is able to be utilized multiple times for adsorbing and removing dyes, for adsorbing metals and removing dyes. Another environmental issue that we are facing these days is the e-waste, especially in Pakistan. Heaps of e-waste are there, which are actually a serious matter for polluting the soils and the water bodies. With this in mind, we utilize spent batteries to get graphite powder, and the electrode powder was utilized to get zinc oxide, and zinc oxide nanoparticles were then prepared. Spent aluminium foil has been used to prepare aluminium powder, and we were able to prepare nano thin films LBL, first preparing the max phase and then the amexine thin films, which was reported in Material Science in Conductor Processing Journal. This has been a breakthrough, and we have been able to sequester heavy metals and effluent gases. These are the applications that we are working on, and my research group is continuing this work. Fly ash, which is another effluent in the environment that has been effectively utilized and embedded in these elastomer and thermosetting thin film architectures. Hydrogen storage is a challenge, and we have prepared certain materials through Leidenfrost method and reported this in various journals, preparing photoelectrodes and just to combat climate change and the energy crisis. This contribution towards fuel cells has been reported, and solid oxide fuel cell, which is a good choice as it offers fuel adaptability along with minimal carbon emissions. But the major drawback is in the SOFCs, in the conventional SOFCs, is the high temperature. We were able to prepare those at low operating temperature. Hence, I conclude that global warming and climate change have adverse, harmful effects on the environment. Therefore, academia and can contribute towards improving and making novel and newer ways how we can combat these through addressing the climate, addressing the energy crisis as well, reducing the energy, reusing renewable energy sources. Since nanotechnology is affordable, reliable source, and I think it is a healthier process if we utilize these materials. This is the laboratory and the research group at Fatima Jinnah University where I work. And this is the campus. Most of you must have visited our campus in Rawalpindi. This is the city campus that I'm showing the photos. And I'm very grateful to my mentors who helped me to start the research at nanothin and polymer chemistry, the generous espousal of Fatima Jinnah University for my research work, the Higher Education Commission Pakistan, the Pakistan Science Foundation through different projects, and the list of the research students is here who have been working in this laboratory. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share this research work at the beginning of this webinar this morning, just to have an idea that the spirit of RCN is how we can do networking for combating climate crisis. I hope that today's webinar would be it's a combination of different researches and research works. So with this, we just shift to what the policy makers are doing, and we'll be sharing, this will be shared by Mr. Muhammad Arif Goheer Sahab, and I invite him to share his slides and share his work. And while Arif Sahab is sharing his slides, I should be stopping my slides. Yeah. So while Arif Sahab is sharing his slides, I would like to give his brief introduction. He is an executive director and at National Focal Point Pakistan NDC Global Climate Change Impact Studies Center, Islamabad, at the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. He is an agronomist and agroclimatologist and is leading the agricultural, forestry, land use program at Global Climate Change Impact Studies Center. He has been representing Pakistan at different, at various conventions as well. He has a rich CV and a rich experience in presenting Pakistan at national and international levels. Because he strongly believes in strengthening government institutions, academia, and private sector linkages to support evidence-based policy making and climate change. I think I allow, since Dr. Arif Sahab has shared his slides, I now invite our guest speaker to kindly share his views about how we can combat or prepare a climate resilient society. Thank you so much for joining, Arif sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Thank you, Dr. Rohama, for elaborative introduction, and thanks to Ken Holland. And I'm really happy to be part of this webinar series. And it is quite long ago when Dr. Rohama talked me about this. Perhaps in July, August this year, and I could not able to meet due to my commitments at ministry and at Global Change Impact Study Center. My center, Global Climate Change Impact Study Center, is basically a research institute which compiles the climate profiles of Pakistan. It does studies on the climate assessments on socio-economic sectors of the country like food, agriculture, water, energy, biodiversity. And besides this, the center also provides policy support to ministry for different actions. It has been actively involved in the preparation of the national climate change policy, clean air policy. We consistently provide to Ministry of Climate Change the greenhouse gas inventory. I'm the focal point of the NDC 3 now, and before that, I have provided the ministry with the two NDC that have been submitted to UNFCCC. Besides that, we are also contributing in the preparation of the National Adaptation Plan, and in the ensuing slides, you will see some of the ministry's interventions regarding the building resilience in the country against the vagaries of the climate change. So in this presentation, I will be talking about uh, that Pakistan, to what extent is the vulnerable country. It is facing currently a couple of extreme events. The impacts are severe in the key sectors like agriculture, water, and public health. And there is dire need to embed adaptation strategies into total policies and action plans, not only at the national level, but also at the provincial level. So my talk will be focusing on these aspects that country, while having a vulnerability to the high level, also believes in the mitigation efforts in the community of global where we also have massive commitments for reducing the emissions. So these are the things on which my presentation will focus on. If you look at the global changing climatic trends, we are aware that at pre-Indus revolution, the carbon dioxide levels were uh, quite less, and then in 2023, these have been escalated to the level of 420 parts per million. And it is expected that by the end of this century, the carbon dioxide levels may rise up to more than 900 parts per million. If you look at the rising surface temperatures, the global average temperature in the last century has risen by 0.6 degrees C, but the projections are it can rise up to 4.8 degrees C by the end of this century. This is the global average. Certain countries and certain regions are exception to it. The third major is the sea level rise, and it is expected that the sea levels will be rising 1.26 meter to 1 meter, which is quite alarming to the globe, since many of the island countries will be having the harsh consequences of these sea level rise. Then we are consistently seeing changing rain patterns across the globe, extreme heat waves, and followed by the extreme flooding events in different parts of the world, and exception to it. If you look at the key challenges of Pakistan, so the first challenge in the country is the rising temperatures. In Pakistan, the temperatures are already beyond the threshold, and that's why we are frequently observing the extreme heat wave conditions in the months of February and March, and sometimes the temperatures may rise up. Some of the areas in Pakistan already are facing the temperatures more than 50 degrees C, in the sense that Balochistan provinces of the country. Then the second major challenge is the changing rainfall patterns, especially in the monsoon. Sometimes we see heavy downpour, and sometimes we see the late onset of the monsoon. Then the third major challenge is since Pakistan and the adjoining areas are also called as the third pole of this region. So glaciers are in abundance in the northern parts of Pakistan, which are under the threat due to this global warming. So glacier melt and water scarcity issues are
Our second speaker, guest speaker, is Miss Abida Begum. She is by qualification, she is a master's in forestry from University of Peshawar and master's in economics from Pakistan Forest Institute, Peshawar. She has a rich experience in non-government organizations and is highly resourceful professional with over 17 years of experience in driving impactful initiatives within the development, private, and non-profit sectors. She has demonstrated expertise in designing and implementing robust projects, monitoring and evaluation frameworks of gender, climate change, afforestation, reforestation, human and institutional development programs, and projects to assess the effectiveness to enhance the outcomes. She has been working as a sociologist and as forestry specialist and human institutional development officer and forestry officer in various organizations, food agriculture organizations of United Nations as well. With this very brief introduction of Ms. Abida Begum, I request you to kindly share your slides and share with us your experience in non-government organization working for climate change and gender issues.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohama, for introducing me. As you can see, my name is Abida, and I'm a forestry graduate. As far as my work experience with different organizations is concerned, I worked on in different communities as well as in different positions with the UN, with the international and national level non-profit organization. While developing this presentation, I was kind of thinking from where I have to start because when we talk about communities and then linking it with with climate change issues and their resilience. So if I look into my own experience of working with communities, there I had seen a lot, experienced a lot with different communities in Pakistan during climate change emergencies, as well as in the normal developmental programs as well. I actually if you have any specific question, I can answer to that question. But what while developing this presentation, what I thought of to give you a bit of context of the overall situation in when we discuss climate change resilience. Um, if we see that the kind of issues, the kind of impact Pakistan has been seeing, even in the previous slide, in the previous presentation, our honorable speaker, he was sharing that the issues being faced across sectors, in particular he mentioned agriculture and many more sectors, which basically were hit hard by the climate change impact. So when we talk about communities in that context, I would say that as communities, we Pakistani communities, they were they are still, and they were by that time with the, if we talk about the pace at which the climate change actually impacted Pakistan, we were not prepared as communities. Like our communities are not prepared for, they were not prepared for the flood emergencies, the rainfalls, the heavy rainfalls which we observed for the last many years in different parts of, I would say, Pakistan, whether it was highly hilly areas of, we discuss of KP, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or we talk about the deserts in Sindh. So the kind of impact is, it was different, and it's something which is recurrent. So and even the level or the quantum of the the impact was so severe that even the government was not that prepared for the to respond to that emergency, and it's still there. So what I personally feel, like some communities, during my work, I observed this, that there were communities that used to do, they had their adaptation measures, which were very indigenous, but these were mostly scattered and isolated. So this is if we look, for example, to Chitral. In Chitral, there used to be they had issues with crop varieties. So and they they were facing this drought as well in some areas, and they had just one winter wheat crop. They had extreme temperature issue as well, very cold in Chitral. So they start doing double cropping, but that is something which they were doing in their own pockets. Likewise, in other areas, I would say, if we talk about the areas of Thar and Thal, which are mostly desert communities. So they've been facing droughts for decades, and it's something which is happening every year. And it's it is something which is, if I compare it with the floods that happened in the recent past. So the issue of drought is something which is very old, in terms of its occurrence, and its frequency is, it's very common. So those communities had their own adaptation or resilience measures, like if they had drought. So for them, the alternate, the livelihood opportunity, which was kind of manageable in that situation, was they started livestock herding, and that is something which gave them a kind of relief. um, but I would say that we don't have still, at community level, at national level, at government level, the climate change is still not optimally mainstreamed in the government planning. If we whenever I usually talk to the communities on climate change issues. So whenever I start discussing climate change, the first response is flood, and why I personally feel the reason is like, the magnitude was so big and it was so much, everywhere on the media. It was reported and it was something like, people observe, like, by themselves. So for them, climate change is only flood, and like, it is with many people. It's not only with the communities. Like at different levels, people are still not aware what is, like, in the context of Pakistan, what is climate change, though they have been seeing it like in terms of extreme weathers. I was that day like reading a report where in 2015 it was like, there were recorded deaths due to extreme temperature in Karachi. Like 1,500 deaths were um, uh, happened due to dehydration and multiple, heat strokes. So this is something which, again, I would say, like the government and, like, in mainstream planning, it should be reflected there. But unfortunately, like, this kind of emergencies are not like, strategically mainstreamed. Currently we've been seeing like a lot of, forest fires. This is something which is again happening, in Margala Hills, and it's very frequent, but we are not prepared. So and similarly, like recently we have dengue, again, like it's a very widespread disease. So but we still don't have a proper response to it. Do the government is and the communities, to like to some extent, but it's still, again, I would say there is a lot more required. More proactive kind of approaches are required when, like, a country is facing so frequent and diverse kind of impact of climate change. So this is something, like, which I feel that even the government and many other organizations, they are not that prepared. These multi faceted climate change impact is not that strategically integrated in the, mainstream planning. And the same, like if it's like higher level, it's not like seen that way with that lens. Likewise, the same is going down in the communities. For the communities, the climate change issue at the moment, it's still something which is like related to flood or that kind of emergency. And then in communities, I would say there is another issue as well when we start discussing the issues of climate change. For communities, climate is something which needs a lot of, like, resources. Like when we talk about climate resilient crops, then it's again, access to that varieties, purchasing power for that kind of varieties, availability of that varieties, information about crop resistant varieties is something which is like, is very little at community level. And again, I would say that vulnerabilities are, if we look into the communities we are working with, the vulnerabilities are, again, it's at different levels. It's across gender, it's across age, ethnicities, and then geography as well. So for me as a community worker, like dealing with so many things it's really challenging. And what my takeaway is, and what I would like suggest, that it's always there are opportunities. Like I would share the examples of some of the projects where I worked, that our focus should be more on awareness and sensitization at this level. Like I previously mentioned, that climate change is the reality, it's real, it's happening, but the kind of awareness at community level, sensitization is still lacking. It still needs that mindfulness in the communities, that sensitization. And if we look, like, it's a very, like, broad kind of debate. It's a very vast debate, and it has different areas to discuss. If we, like, in communities, for me as a woman, I worked with a lot of, like, communities, women communities. So For them, the vulnerabilities are almost doubled in sense of access to proper education, knowledge. And if we look into the rural communities, I would say like more than 10.2 millions of women population in Pakistan, particularly in rural areas, they are dependent in agriculture. And I still remember that, like, in 2010 and 11 floods, I saw women used to go to collect fodder for their livestock, because that's something which is women's job. They have to do it. And like, that's taking care of families, and livestock is their responsibility. So for me, it was like so like very heartbreaking when I saw them barefooted, drowned, half drowned in water, going to the far flung fields and collecting fodder for their animals. So, and this is something which is happening like time and again, and we need to like find proper solutions. We have to give them alternate livelihood opportunities as well, and make them prepared for such kind of emergencies. If we like, in the recent monsoon, I would say I had discussion with different colleagues in the government sector as well. uh, when I told them that there is like, there were a lot of alerts, warnings from the government about the upcoming monsoon. And we as a government, I would say even development sector, we didn't have that resources to work as a team, work in a more holistic way to deal with the in a to respond to that situation. Our response is, the other issue is like, our response is mostly reactive. When an emergency happens, that is very unfortunate at all levels. Then we start like, responding to that emergency, to that issue. So rather than be reactive, I would say it's good to be more proactive. And for that, awareness and sensitization at all levels is very important. And it doesn't like, you don't need to, I personally feel, to have like, do something really big, but it's always that you start taking small steps, engaging all the stakeholders, like, at different decision forums, like at union council level. There's always like, planning is there is UC level planning is being done. So the important thing is whether women are included there, the other minorities, the with like, again, it's we talk about vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities have so many levels and so many layers in Pakistan. If we like, if we talk about women living in the far-flung area of Sindh, which is like, always particularly those communities which are dependent on agriculture, the rural communities. Again, they had the vulnerability being it's double, being a woman, then for minority community, and then you don't own land, you are a landless farmer, or which is called like, usually hari. So your vulnerability is, I would say, it's multiplied by 6 times to the vulnerability which a woman face in Islamabad. So it's the kind of vulnerability a women have in Islamabad. So it is something which we like, when we are planning, when we are designing a project or a program, these issues should be very well taken care of. Um, Along with this, like, as I mentioned, that we did in like in my past experiences, and in ROZAN, we worked with the universities and with the line departments. So it's always good to work in collaboration, in partnership, because it's a win-win situation, in my opinion, for both. In many cases, like the NGOs, they can mobilize, they can sensitize communities, and they have like, very good outreach to the community. So but again, universities with the more advanced knowledge with technical capacity, better technical capacity can always help the non-government organizations as well as the communities in that. So basically it's the bridge of where we talk about awareness, knowledge building. That bridge can be actually that gap can be bridged through mutual partnership between universities and NGOs, like an NGO where I'm working. We recently did a project successfully with one of our partner university, with Fatima Women University, I will categorically mention here, and with Qaid Azam University as well. I would also mention that ROZAN as an organization, for them climate change is not something which is their area of work in particular, but as we are more concerned about the protection of women, girls and children. So for us in particular, the climate change impact is more for for women and girls, where they have less access or very poor access to resources, to opportunities. So we see it in that lens, that it's very important that the communities where we are working, where we would like to have peace and justice in every walk of life, I would say, in every area. It's very important to make them aware of the impact of climate change, to make them ally in dealing with the issue. Recently, as I mentioned, that we did a project which is called Power to Youth project. So in that project, in partnership with the university, we worked in Islamabad in 5 communities, and we had very good community leaders, which were mostly youth from that community of the age between 15 to 29. So through those leaders, to those activists, we trained almost, I think, 150 or 200. Actually, university trained them. We sensitized them, and we actually linked them with the university. So the university basically trained them on the issues. And as you know, that these 5 UCs I'm mentioning, it's Islamabad is though it's the capital, but these are the suburbs of Islamabad. So these are not that well off communities, but they are partially, I would say, urban, partially rural, because they are still dependent on agriculture for as one of the livelihood opportunity. So keeping in view the urban setting, the university introduced some of the techniques of vertical gardening, and which is something which is very much liked by the community. They had these plastic bottles, containers, and the university taught them how to use it, make it more useful. So it's the concept of reuse was actually, and how to on small pieces of land, and even using your own small walls in a small houses, how you can actually make use of it in a more productive way. And so it was something which was taught, and then the university, the community leaders, they keep on sharing it, that information as activists. So I would say every community leader trained then 5, 6 more friends, community members, and they replicated the same idea. So we can with small steps, with small projects, it's always good to engage them. It's always good to share those ideas. Even if I look back at my work with other communities, I still remember in Sindh, it was back then in 2014, or it was 2013, we worked on introducing the solar the women, they basically collect, I would like to give you the background. They used to collect these these chilies, and they used to do it sun-dried in the open. So we actually started working on small businesses with them, but making it more eco-friendly. So we introduced very, like, at very smaller level, a kind of where they can actually solar chili dryers kind of equipments we provided to them and trained them. And then, like, they were trained in the how to process it, package it, and sell those products. So this is something like, these are the kind of small eco-friendly initiatives which we can take with communities. We can work on it, and this can, like, help us to achieve the broader goals. Apart from that, as, like, I some of my thoughts I mentioned in this slide, in the next slide, it's more around, I would say, our role as a who actually advocate for communities, and, like, advocate for policies and practices that promote more environmental protection techniques, climate resilient approaches. So we can work on that as an organizations. Likewise, as I mentioned, it's always good to engage communities, whatever approach, whether it's farmer field school approach, whether you at very, like, basic primary level, you start discussing with the, engaging small kids in different activities where they can get awareness about climate change issues. It's always good. Whatever approach is followed, it's like, it's always, I would say, contribute to the broader goal. So these are some of the like, the recommendation, I would say, are, it's my experience that I shared with you, which, like, during my work with communities, I learned. And if you have any questions or any in particular, then I can, like, answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Abda. Your work in the humble communities of Pakistan across different districts of Pakistan is really commendable. My sincere intention and honest wish was to have the policymakers from the Ministry of Climate Change and the community workers like Ms. Abda on one table. But due to this technical glitch, we could not get a thorough interaction with Arif Goheer Saab, but we are really grateful to Ms. Abda, and we are grateful to the work that she's contributing towards climate changes and sensitizing the communities. I welcome you all to type your questions in the Q&A so that I can convey your questions to Ms. Abda. But I hope that we've been able to convey in this webinar the intention that this resilient network has to be established, since it is transboundary and transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary effort that is the need of the hour. So if we have any questions from the community, from the participants and from the audience, we have a question from Ms. Noreen that how corporate organizations can collaborate your organization to spread the awareness in communities. Ms. Abda, could you please answer this? How corporate organizations can partner with your work?
Thank you very much. It's actually, we worked at some level with Philip Morris International, who's a tobacco company, and so they have a very, like, big role in, I would say, deforestation. But what they actually contribute, they are reducing their carbon footprints through plantations with farmers. So it's I would say it's for the corporate sector, it's their social responsibility as well. So they're under their CSR, they can partner with any NGO, local NGOs. It's very easy for them, considering their technical capacity. And like, again, it's all depends on, for us as a non-government organizations, we have a very strong outreach to like, to different vulnerable communities. So what we can do, we can give you that, level of access, that sensitization and mobilization of communities. For corporate sector, it's all depends like, how they want to reduce their carbon footprints, whether they would like to have introduce more I would say eco-friendly businesses, whether they like, it's always good to, for me, as a woman, I would like to, engage more and more women in green businesses, in green industries. So corporate sector can support, financially support the non-government organization, and like, they can also include public sector as well. That's the area where they can collaborate together.
Thank you. Ms. Abdul, you've already answered Yasir Hussein's question because he's asking about the sectors where you work. So we can move to Manzoor Kareem's question that given the increasing frequency of climate-related disasters in Pakistan, such as devastating floods of 2022, what specific actionable steps should both the government and the private sector prioritize in the next 5 years to build climate resilience? Actionable steps.
It's thank you very much. It's a very good question, and it is something which for like, if it all depends where you are actually where you are positioned. For me as a development sector specialist, like whatever is in my access or wherever I can influence, for me it's more awareness on like, it's not just floods. Again, I would say it's a multiple kinds of issues which we as a country, in the form of climate change impact we are facing. For us, it's important to aware. It's very important to aware communities, whether they are from urban setting or from like, rural setting. Secondly, as I actually mentioned, like previously mentioned, be rather than to be more reactive, it's always good to be more proactive. For us, like I would say, like I actually we like it all, again I would say depends on, it's not only floods, like forest fires, which concerns me a lot as a biodiversity conservation advocate. It's like, it's happening time and again, the Margala Hills, and even in the I saw it in like, on the Himalayan range as well. And in the Margala Hills, you've been like, everybody who's living in Islamabad, every year we see that this is happening. So for me, it's very important to have those equipments as a like, to quickly put off that fire. We don't have those kind of planes which we need to like, hire. So it again depends on the kind of disasters. If we talk about dengue, so what we can do as a like, in agriculture sector, what can be done, like, all the sectors has to work together in a more integrated way, whether it's the development sector, or whether it's and again, like, there are many things coming to my mind. If we talk about research, or 2 to 3% of the GDP goes to research. So this is something which we like, as a, which is something which we work is it's one of should be or one of the top priority. We should invest more in research, because we need to introduce flood resistant varieties. We need to work on these things, like, the monsoons are so unpredictable. So, and every year we as a country, we face crop damages. We lose most of our like, cash crops. So how, like, this is something which we have to be like, proactively be prepared. We have to introduce more climate resilient kind of varieties. We have to, our approaches should be more integrated, considering all, like, types of disasters we've been facing at the moment or for the last few years. So these are
Thank you,
some.
Abida. We have question from Sajjad Chano Sahab, Yasir Hussain, and they are all, we've already replied to those. So I'm just moving on to Muhammad Junaid Khan's comment that he's working on relief, rehabilitation, and settlement department. And his organization is already working on AI-based models for drought, heat, and heat wave and floods. So this was a comment, and we'll be sharing these comments with you. Everybody is appreciating what you're doing in the community. We have Muhammad Ehsan Saab who's asking that can you please share how can we get in touch with the resource people? Can you share emails or other resources? I think there's a gap of and there's a need of connectivity. Bridging the gap is actually this was the idea this morning, that how we can connect to people, and of course we'll be able to connect with the people in ministry and with Miss Abda, now that we have her contact as well. We have a question from this is not a question, but Fayazul Rashid Saab is saying that he's working in the field of aerosols as a PhD student, and Anwar Rashid Saab is saying that I'm a criminology student. How can I implement my field to do more and more things as climate change action? So when we are talking about vulnerable communities and humble communities, this is again yet another area where we can work, I think. Actually, I'm also working in a community outreach project, and I'm partnering. Our very good partners in this project are people from ROZAN, and Abda has been very instrumental in that project. So since we are reaching out to different communities, the transgender communities, the women, the minorities, so we can work in different other communities as well. Thank you for this comment, Anwar Rashid Saab. We have Fayazul Rashid, who's asking that is there any mutual research group of universities or cooperative sectors? Yes, we do have. We just have to keep on looking at these non-government organizations that when they have call for projects, and we can always build up these networking and work on various projects. Mohammad Kamar Abbas Saab is asking that do any students launch projects can collaborate? Yes, of course, in universities, students are actually working on different projects, and we have the business incubation centers in universities, which can also be instrumental in networking, for such networking. We have Mahapara Farooq, who's asking how can civil society organizations working on human rights and governance can include climate change in their work? Abda, would you answer this? How can civil society organizations working on human rights can contribute towards climate change?
Yes, of course. Like, in this, like the project I was mentioning, we are working with civil society as partners, because they, again, I would say these are like very grassroots level organization. They are very close to the communities. So obviously they can, like wherever they are working, they can share the information, like, if they can sensitize their communities about the issues. They can advocate for their right. They can engage them more community-based planning, and like, as a community, like if I look into, like, my previous experience, now I remember that I worked in one of the project. It was back then in 2007, when the earthquake happened in district Mansehra. So we used to work with the communities living close to the forest area. So what we used to do by that time, the challenge was more about, like, giving them alternate livelihood opportunities. So for that particular community, I would say what was important first to identify the resources they had and the capacities they have, and how to actually make best use of the available resources. Like they were dependent on the forests, like the forest they were managing, it's partially government and partially community owned forests. So there they started working on those areas, like where they were rehabilitating those forests which were degraded, in collaboration with the government. They had opportunities to work, like they learned their different techniques, like bioengineering. Like the issues there were more of landsliding and I would say uh, degradation of land, forest area, forest cover. So the people were like, the communities were trained. They were actually given that knowledge, how to work jointly. So it was both on building their technical capacities, as well as how to manage their own issues. So livelihood resource plans were developed at village level, and then those were like, throughout the project, regularly those were monitored. And it, women and men both contributed to the plans. So this is something like, which you can always look into, and where the civil society actors can also contribute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Abda, for sharing your rich experience. With this, I invite Dr. Ken Holland to kindly share his comments at the end of as we are approaching towards the end of the webinar. Thank you, Ms. Abda.
So, thank you, Dr. Rohama Gill, for moderating this very interesting session and discussion. And I also want to thank our panelists for their exciting research and for sharing their insights with us. So in the chat box, you'll find a feedback form. So please click the link and complete the form. That'll help us make these webinars even more useful to you and more relevant to your interests. So on behalf of USAID's Higher Education System Strengthening Activity, I want to thank everyone for participating in this important project. And I would ask Dr. Rohama, please, to complete a report describing the main points of the speakers, and I'd ask you to send that to me as soon as you can. So I want to thank everyone for participating. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.